We've been working on this issue for a couple of years now across the country. It was actually brought to us by an outside entity. We took a look at it and thought this was something that was very, very needed and timely to address. We all think about infrastructure and roads and bridges. We drive on them every day. When we hit a pothole, we're very ticked, and we want to get that pothole fixed. What we don't see is what's below our feet, and that's our water infrastructure. Our water piping material has been in the ground for a long period of time, and now is the time when it needs to be replaced. And that's what we're going to talk about here today. So before I get too far into the presentation, I do want to give you a little background and put the mission slide up here about the American Chemistry Council. So we are the national trade association representing the business of chemistry. We have about 160 different chemical manufacturing companies that operate in all 50 states. North Carolina is actually one of our largest chemical producing states in the country. We have a little over 42,000 employees. I think it's the fourth largest state in the country in terms of chemical manufacturing and annual product value output. Now there's a sheet on the table, it's a solid blue sheet that has a lot more of the detail of what we do here in the state, but it talks about all the economic impact, how we pay our employees, things of that nature. So I'll let you take a look at that if you'd like. But so we represent just about everything. We don't make a product that you pick up at the store. We make something that makes that product better. So we are in 97% of all goods manufactured in the U.S. So we're the building blocks to it's almost everything. And when it comes to this issue, we do kind of hit it on all avenues and all available materials. Now we have companies that make PVC and polyethylene pipes. We have companies that make a wrap that goes around ductile iron pipe to make sure that they are less corrosive to help them when they're being installed to prevent any issues at installation. We also have companies that make additives that go into concrete pipe to help make those pipes feasible. Then depending on the type of pipe material you have in the ground and the type of system you have and the distance of that system, we make different compounds to help make sure that that water is clean from the time it leaves the facility to the last possible user in that system. We want to, so we kind of come at this issue from all angles. So here, the mission of this issue is to allow proven free market principles to help communities update their water infrastructure. So these are some numbers that we pulled from the American Society of Civil Engineers. We have about 250,000 water breaks every year, about 660 per day. That's very inconvenient to a lot of people across the country. We think, and it's been estimated that over the next 20 years we'll need at least $1 trillion. The National Taxpayers Union, that number's a little higher. I think they have like $1.39 trillion will be needed over the next 20 years to modernize the system. Over the past 20 years, Congress has only appropriated about $42 billion to help replace water infrastructure. So you can see there's a long way to go with a little bit of resources available. Now the president did announce $1 trillion for infrastructure, but that's all infrastructure. That's not just water, that's everything. So there will be some more resources available, but not everything that we need. We lose about 70% of our clean water to breaks every year, and then that costs about us $47 billion a year in lost water usage. So where do we see the issue? At the state level, generally the procurement policies are very fair. They do allow for open competition, no preference to brand, things of that nature. What we see is at the local level, depending on the structure of the utility and the community, they have in their specs material mandates. So they go through and design what the system needs to do to perform. The thickness of the pipe, the size of the pipe, the pressure class of the pipe, the length of the pipe. They go through all of those items, but then they put in there, and sorry, this is a little hard to read. I don't know if you can, the pointers aren't really working. But they go through, they talk about, the pipe must be this thick, this class, whatever, but then it must be ductile iron. So even you start here, ductile iron water main shall meet the requirements. It's right there from the beginning. They have a material preference, so then what happens when that engineer designs a system and they put out the bid, only the material that is listed in the proposal can bid on the project. So what we're seeing is materials that can compete. These are materials that are approved by ASTM and AWWA, the national organizations that approve everything, that can't bid on these projects. So if we were to open up this language, all that would do is it wouldn't change bidding policies or procurement practices. It would simply allow materials that meet these standards to bid on that project. And we all know when we have competition, we drive down costs. Whether our material gets selected, whether a competing material gets selected, that material will be more cost effective because you now have competition. So states that we've worked on this legislation so far, Arkansas, South Carolina, North Carolina, Ohio, and Michigan. Michigan, obviously, they've had a big issue there with Flint. It's made a lot of national attention. Ohio was another state we selected just based on what the marketplace looked like. North Carolina, South Carolina, the same in Arkansas. What our state bills do is they ask for the opportunity to bid on the project. We want that local engineer to design the system. All we're saying is that after they design all the needs, any material that can meet those standards can bid on the project. And at the end of the day, nothing in the language precludes a local engineer from picking the material that is best suited for their environment. And so all we're trying to simply accomplish is to allow competition to help maybe drive down costs and save the taxpayer money. And so right now where we are, we're pending in Ohio in both the House and the Senate. We think we'll be up on the House floor very soon. Michigan, similar story. South Carolina, we actually just passed on Thursday in the Senate in the budget. The minority leader offered an amendment that was supported by the president of the Senate on the floor. So we're now going back to the House to agree, and hopefully we'll get that done here pretty soon. But that's sort of where we all lie. In North Carolina, the legislation a couple of years back, we were able to get it out of the Senate very quickly, but then it kind of got paused in the Senate session, or in the House. Session dragged on very long that year, and I think it was a good thing just to wrap it up and get focused on the next opportunity. So we've been working on this in about 5 states. Indiana, there was a bill. It's not listed, but it is highlighted. There was a bill introduced a couple of years ago by the home builders. The home builders have an interest in this issue because when they build a community, they have to follow whatever that local utility mandates. And then at the end of the day, they turn that system over to the utility. So they build a 300 home community, and they give that utility 300 customers, and they have to build it however they want. There is an example of a community here in North Carolina. The home builder shared us with this, that they had to put in clay pipes. So that, we're talking about a material that is not necessarily the normal, but it was what was referenced in the utility manual. So that's what they had to go with. We are working on this at the federal level as well. So a couple weeks ago, Congressman Babin from Texas introduced a piece of legislation. The key difference between what we're doing at the state and the federal level, the state bills are all focused on water infrastructure, piping material. The federal bill is focused on all infrastructure. So this would be very broad. So anything, roads, bridges, public transit, whatever the infrastructure dollars are going to go to, the federal bill is going to go attack all of those issues. So, and then follows the same principles. We want that local engineer to make sure that the system works, it's the right material for the project, and they have the final say-so on what they need. There we go. All right, so on to some studies. Over the years when we did this, when this issue first came to us, we thought open competition, who wouldn't like it? Free market principles, let's let everyone get in there and bid that can meet the standards. Let's save some money, let's do the right thing. Well, since then we've developed a number of studies. The first study here looks at North Carolina communities. Here we looked at Raleigh and Charlotte, Raleigh being a closed bid city and Charlotte being opened. And what we found is in Charlotte they were saving about $150,000 per mile of installed pipe versus Raleigh. So big numbers. And what was most interesting for me in that study was that, and this was the 2015 study we did, in that study, Charlotte put in about a little over 15,000 feet of metals or concrete and a little over 15,000 feet of plastics. And they were able to achieve that sort of cost savings over Raleigh that was just bidding one material. So that was the best example of true competition where multi-material were competing, the city was choosing what was best for them, and they were saving a whole heck of a lot of money. This study here is on South Carolina. This is sort of a deep dive into all the procurement practices. It is a little challenging to find these. A lot of these, we've had to do some FOIA requests. They're not available online all the time, depending on the size of the community, and so we've had to kind of dig in our heels to get all this information. But this is sort of a one-pager snapshot. I'm sorry I didn't print this one off. I forgot to, but I can get this for you. It's available on our website. But it goes through and talks about all the various ways that materials are mandated in their specs. And the one thing I didn't mention earlier is that so there are some cities like Charlotte, Myrtle Beach, South Carolina that do it well. And what they have is they have all their performance standards outlined, and they just always refer to it as the material. And we had an engineer from Myrtle Beach come and testify last year in South Carolina, and he mentioned that once they started going that way, the pencil became a little sharper, and they were getting much better quotes and much more competitive pricing. The last one here is sort of a compilation of some studies that we put together. This one I really would encourage you to take a look at. Michigan State, Governor Snyder in Michigan asked Michigan State University to do a study. Boxes 2 and 3 highlight some findings from that study. If you're looking at just pure cost to the consumer, over the last 10 years, water rates have gone up 137%. So that impacts all of us in our pockets. We're paying those bills, and that that was one thing they found. Another thing that they found in that study, and remember this is a study commissioned by the governor of Michigan, not us, was that if this had been one of the policies available, a tragedy like Flint hopefully could have been prevented because they would have been able to decrease costs, save money, and hopefully replace more pipe in a more meaningful time frame. So this is our website. We're trying to get a really robust coalition. We have modernwatersystems.org. We've been pushing this out to a lot of citizens, trying to get the community engaged. Folks that are interested in this so far have been, it's kind of at the state level, not at the national level, but like AARP is engaged in Michigan. We're potentially, hopefully, they're going to engage in South Carolina. The home builders have engaged in all the states that we work in. And then obviously, depending on the state, the chamber or the manufacturing group is supportive of this issue as well. So we're trying to build our coalition to really broaden the base and make sure we get a diverse subsection of folks interested in this. So here's an example of some of the things we put together. Where does your water come from? We change these up constantly, show different imagery, show different messaging, trying to get folks engaged and interested. And we do a lot of this through Facebook targeting. It's incredible how, I don't know how many folks are on Facebook, but it's incredible how much actually feedback and response you can get from this versus traditional sources of activation.